This story is titled, My Brother's Daughter Complained to Her Parents That I Disappeared from Her Life, but she remains unaware of the real circumstances that forced me to pretend not to see her whenever we cross paths. Hey everyone, I'm a 41-year-old guy who used to be the closest thing to a father my niece Lily ever had. She was only 6 when my sister passed away in a car accident during a thunderstorm. It was fast, brutal, and final. After receiving the news, her husband Thomas just sat in the living room for hours, not moving, not speaking, just staring into space as if his world had completely collapsed. My parents were too old to take on a child full-time, so I stepped in without hesitation. There was never any official paperwork or adoption forms filed. It was just understood that I would be there to help. And I was there for every moment that mattered. Every school event, every scraped knee, every bedtime story. I took her to her first day of school after everything happened. I helped her pick Halloween costumes each year and taught her how to ride a bike. When nightmares came in the darkness of night, she'd call me. Not her actual father, but I was the one who showed up. Thomas never liked my involvement, though. He'd nod and say thanks when I dropped her off, but I could feel the resentment radiating off him. He couldn't admit that he couldn't handle raising her alone, but he also made it crystal clear that Lily was his daughter and he was just letting me help temporarily. Still, I stayed close for years, and somehow our unusual arrangement worked. She'd run to me with her drawings, handmade birthday cards, and spelling tests with gold stars. She called me her almost dad, and I never corrected her. It felt right, like I was exactly where I needed to be. Things started changing when she hit her teens. At first, it was just little things. She didn't want me waiting outside her school anymore. She'd roll her eyes when I reminded her about breakfast or asked her to text when she got home safe. I figured it was normal teenage stuff, the kind of independence-seeking behavior most kids go through. But everything got worse after she turned 14. That year, she started having major breakdowns, panic attacks, missing school, crying alone in her room for hours. Thomas finally decided to act and put her in therapy. It seemed like the right move at the time, something that could help her process everything that had happened. Except after therapy began, she changed even more. She began canceling our plans and started calling me overbearing. I remember showing up once with her favorite takeout from that Thai place she loved, the one with the spring rolls that made her eyes light up, and she barely looked at me. Said I was hovering, that I didn't give her space. I backed off immediately, thinking she just needed room to grow, but that wasn't enough. When she was 16, we had the worst argument of our lives. She told me I treated her like a replacement kid, like I only stuck around because I couldn't have a child of my own. She said I had no right to try and play dad. That last one gutted me after everything I'd done for her over the years. But she was angry, crying and shaking as the words tumbled out, so I simply told her I'd give her space. And I meant it. I didn't text her anymore. I didn't show up unannounced. I waited for her to reach out when she was ready. 5 years passed like this. I never blocked her number, but she never reached out either. Through my parents, I'd hear bits and pieces. She was in college, doing all right, no major problems. That was all I got, and I didn't press for more details. I wanted to respect her boundaries. Then, out of nowhere, I got invited to my nephew's engagement dinner. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic, just thought it would be a normal family gathering. And then I saw her. Lily walked in with a friend, laughing softly, with the same nervous habit of touching her necklace when looking around a room. She saw me, and we locked eyes for a second. I nodded in acknowledgement, but she turned away immediately. All night she didn't say a single word to me. At one point, I tried to approach. I stood near the buffet table, waited until she was alone, and gently stepped forward. But before I could say anything, she walked off like I wasn't even there. Not angry, just cold. Dismissive, like I didn't matter at all. Then came the toast. Her cousin stood up to say a few words, and everyone raised their glasses. Then Lily, glass in hand, added something. Just one line, her voice shaking slightly. It's hard to trust people after being left by the ones who promised they'd always be there. I felt the air shift around me. My brother leaned over, speaking quietly enough that no one else heard. You brought this on yourself. Then he went back to smiling like nothing had happened. I couldn't move. I didn't understand. I never left her. I stayed away because she asked me to. When I got home that night, I sat in my car for 10 minutes just thinking about what had happened. Then I pulled out my phone and sent her a message, just saying I was sorry things had gotten so messy between us, and if she ever wanted to hear my side, I'd be there. No response came. Later that week, my parents came by for coffee. I asked them if they'd talked to Lily, and they both glanced at each other before saying some version of, she has her version of things, and that I should let her heal how she needs to. When I asked if she was okay, they nodded and said she seemed settled. I didn't know what that meant exactly. I started cleaning out my storage room a few days later, half out of restlessness, half because I hadn't touched it in years. Behind some old boxes of cables and a busted vacuum, I found a small plastic tub. Inside were crayon drawings, birthday cards, and notes she wrote me over the years. One had a stick figure labeled, "Me and my real dad." Another said, "You're my favorite person in the world." I sat on the floor for over an hour just reading them, memories flooding back with each piece of paper. That was when I realized something. Maybe I'd made the wrong call by staying silent all this time. Maybe letting her believe I disappeared was worse than fighting for the truth. I don't want to argue or make her feel worse, but I need to speak just once, not to change her mind, just to say what really happened. The last real year I spent with Lily was when she was 16. She was in her second year of high school and already under more pressure than she could handle. Her grades were slipping, and she'd come home some nights with dark circles under her eyes, barely speaking. The school counselor called me more than once because she'd get lightheaded in class, refuse to eat sometimes, or just freeze during presentations. They said it looked like anxiety attacks. Her father wasn't showing up. He'd answer the school's calls but wouldn't go in. Most of the time, I was the one picking her up when she needed to leave early. I drove her to therapy twice a week, helped with essays, made her snacks, and sat with her while she studied. I never pushed her. If she wanted to talk, she did. If not, I just stayed close, offering silent support. When spring break came around, she looked exhausted. I asked if she wanted to go somewhere, just for a few days. No big plan, just a drive up the coast to a small rental I knew about. She agreed, and we went to a quiet, cloudy town by the water. We walked to the beach, cooked pasta from a local shop, and watched old movies. One evening, we danced in the kitchen to some old playlist she'd made when she was 12. She laughed so hard she fell on the floor. For a moment, it felt like things were getting better between us. On the last full day, we stopped for gas before heading to a lookout spot. She left her phone in the car while she went inside to grab something from the station. While waiting, I saw it buzz on the dashboard. It lit up with a group chat preview. Just a few lines. Her name was in the group, along with a couple of usernames I didn't recognize. They were talking about the trip. One message read, "He's seriously obsessed like I can't go anywhere without him breathing down my neck." Another followed, "Uncle Pity Party strikes again." I didn't open anything or scroll through her messages. When she got back in the car, I handed her the phone and said nothing. The rest of the trip moved slower, and I felt a weight settling between us. She didn't notice, or if she did, she didn't mention it. 2 weeks later, she skipped a therapy session. I called to reschedule, and the receptionist mentioned that Lily had started seeing a new therapist, someone her father had picked. No one had told me about this change. That was when Thomas started showing up again. Out of nowhere, he began picking her up from school, texting her daily, and even taking her out to dinner once a week. Suddenly, he was involved again, after years of minimal participation in her life. At first, I hoped that was a good thing, that maybe he was finally stepping up to be the father she needed. But then she started avoiding me. She stopped asking for rides. One day, I texted her to confirm her exam schedule, and the message bounced. She had deleted my number. Her school had a spring showcase where she performed a solo on stage for the first time in a while. I showed up early and sat near the front. She saw me from backstage and turned away. After the show, she walked past me without stopping, just kept going with her friends. Later that night, I sat her down in the living room and asked what was going on. I kept it simple, not wanting to overwhelm her. She looked at the floor the entire time. Then in one breath, she said I made her feel like she couldn't breathe, like she was always being monitored and she needed space, real space from me. She said the new therapist told her to start setting clear boundaries, that she needed to repair her relationship with her actual parent, not rely on me forever. She said she was trying to grow up, and I wasn't letting her. She asked me not to come to her school again, not to text, not to show up unless she asked. She said she needed me to step away for good. I didn't argue. I told her I understood, that she didn't owe me anything. I reminded her she could always come back, and that I'd always be here if she needed me. She didn't reply. That night I left her a short note and a small keychain shaped like a sea turtle from the beach town we had visited. She liked turtles when she was little. I slipped it into her desk drawer. She never mentioned it. After that, nothing. My parents didn't bring it up. Thomas certainly didn't. At one point, I asked my father if I'd done something wrong, and he told me not to make it about me, that Lily was trying to figure herself out, and that maybe this was what she needed. So I stayed silent. For a long time, I wondered if I'd done too much, if I was overbearing, if I had blurred a line that shouldn't have been crossed. I never tried to take Thomas's place, but I'd also never fully stepped back when he started returning to her life. Now, after hearing what she said at the engagement dinner, after being iced out like I'd never been part of her life, I keep going back to that moment when she was 16. That trip, that phone screen. She had already decided who I was in her story, but I hadn't left her. I just did what she asked. After she turned 18, I started writing letters. One on her birthday, one every Christmas. Nothing dramatic, just updates, memories, small things she used to laugh at. I never mailed any of them. I kept them in a drawer labeled by year. The first one had a photo of the treehouse we built in my backyard. She helped hammer in the floorboards, though she bent most of the nails. The second letter had a printed copy of the science fair results from the year we stayed up all night building a volcano that fizzed with real steam. That project got her first place. The third letter included a drawing she made when she was 10. Me in a superhero cape, flying above a stick version of our house. I stopped adding photos after that. The letters became shorter, but I still wrote them. Even when she turned 21, I didn't reach out. Not once. Every year I thought about it. Every time I heard something vague about her. New school, a job in the city. I held back. The silence felt like something she wanted, and I didn't want to cross a line she'd drawn so clearly. One afternoon, while cleaning out my office desk, I found a folder on my old email account. Inside was a drafted message from 5 years ago. I had written it the night before her 18th birthday. It was full of stories. Late-night baking disasters, the night we camped in the living room during a thunderstorm, the time I let her cut my hair with safety scissors because she wanted to be a stylist. It ended with one line. "I'm proud of who you're becoming no matter where you go." The email had never been sent. I read it twice, then closed the laptop. I rewrote it as a letter and mailed it to the last address I had for her. No return name, just a typed envelope. I didn't expect anything. I just wanted her to have something in her hands, something real that said she hadn't been forgotten. Weeks passed, and nothing came back. About a month later, I stopped into a small coffee shop near the university. I was meeting a former coworker for lunch. While waiting in line, I heard my name. I turned around and saw Madison, Lily's closest friend from high school. She looked surprised, then a little uncomfortable. We talked briefly. She asked how I'd been. Then right as she was leaving, she paused. She didn't look at me when she spoke, just stirred her drink and said, "I always thought what she did to you was cold. I didn't understand at first." I asked what she meant. She hesitated, then told me that Lily used to say I had just disappeared. That one day I was there, and the next I was gone. No explanation, no goodbye. According to Madison, that's what all their friends believed. I didn't argue. I told her the story, the trip, the conversation where Lily asked me to step back, the letter I left behind, the years I stayed away because she said she needed me to. Madison looked stunned. Her exact words were, "She never said any of that." We left it there. She gave me a polite nod and walked out. I didn't follow. That night I went through an old phone backup. I found a folder of voicemails from years ago. Most were short, missed calls, quick reminders. But one stood out. It was Lily, age 14. Her voice cracked as she talked about a bad day. She had failed a test and felt stupid. At the end of the message, she said, "You're the only family that shows up for me. Thank you for not giving up on me." I played it twice. That was the moment it all became real. I had mourned her in silence for years, but hearing that voice, raw and young, I realized I hadn't just lost her. I had lost the version of her who once believed in me. Even then, I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't write again. I told myself the truth mattered even if only to me. I knew what happened. I knew I hadn't vanished. I had stepped back because she asked me to. My mother once said, "You were like a father to her, but she never asked for that." I think about that a lot. Maybe she never wanted me in that role. Maybe I filled a space that wasn't mine to keep. Or maybe she just needed someone to blame when things fell apart. Either way, I've stopped waiting. I still have the letters. I still keep the voicemails backed up on 2 hard drives. But I've stopped imagining some dramatic reunion where she comes back and wants answers. I'm not angry. I'm not hopeful. I'm just done expecting anything. I haven't erased her. I haven't blocked her. But I've let go of the idea that this story needs a neat ending. I was there. I showed up. I cared. That has to be enough. The call came just after noon on a Thursday. I didn't recognize the number, but I picked up anyway. It was Thomas, Lily's father. We hadn't spoken in over 6 years. He didn't ask how I'd been or even say hello. The first thing out of his mouth was, "Why are you trying to dredge up the past now?" There was no small talk, no emotion, just a flat accusation. He didn't give me a chance to answer before launching into a list of complaints. He said I had crossed boundaries back when Lily was a child, that I had confused her by acting like a father when I wasn't one, that I always tried to be more than what I was supposed to be. I stayed quiet until he finished. Then I told him the truth again, that I stepped in because he wouldn't, that I never tried to replace him, that I went to every school meeting because he didn't show up, that I held her hand through panic attacks because no one else did. He didn't deny the missed meetings, but he insisted he was always there in the ways that mattered. According to him, I inserted myself into things that weren't my business. He said I created an emotional dependency that Lily needed to outgrow. I reminded him of that summer she was 13, when he left her with our parents for 2 straight months. I reminded him how the school counselor had to call me 3 times before someone finally showed up to take responsibility. I brought up the therapy bills I paid when he wouldn't return the clinic's calls, the time she had a breakdown during finals week, and the school called me, not him. There was a long silence on the line. Then he said, "That's your version." Just that. No defense, no apology. Before I could respond, he added almost under his breath, "She was never going to understand why things were done the way they were." That part stuck with me. It wasn't meant for me. He said it like he was talking to himself. It sounded like something rehearsed, like he had said it before. He hung up soon after that. I didn't call him back. The next day, I drove to my parents' house. They were in the garden when I arrived. We sat on the porch with iced tea, and I asked them something I should have asked years ago. What did Thomas say to them after Lily cut me off? My mother looked down at her hands for a long time. Then she said that Thomas had once come over a few months after the falling out. He told them he needed Lily to move past her emotional reliance on me, that she was too connected, that it was unhealthy and holding her back. He said therapy would help her reset things. My father didn't add much. He just muttered that Thomas always made things sound reasonable until you looked closer. I drove home that night with my windows down and my mind racing. The idea that Lily had been told I was holding her back, like I was some kind of obstacle, hit harder than anything else. Not because it hurt, but because it explained so much. Back at home, I pulled out an old hard drive from the desk drawer and started searching. It was the same one I'd used to back up everything from my old phones and laptops. I remembered an old voicemail Thomas had left years ago, one I hadn't listened to since the day it arrived. I dug through the external hard drive where I used to back up my phones and found it after about 20 minutes. It was dated 7 years back. His voice was rough, like he'd been crying or drinking. He thanked me for keeping things together while he figured stuff out. He said he didn't know how long it would take him to be ready to be a real parent. He ended the message with, "She's lucky to have you. I'm not there yet." I copied the voicemail to a secure folder and labeled it clearly. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Maybe nothing. But it was proof for me at least that I hadn't imagined it, that I didn't push my way into anything. I filled a space that was left empty for years. Still no word from Lily. No texts, no calls, no email. I didn't expect one. That weekend, I went to the bookstore and bought a blank journal. Not the kind with prompts or quotes, just clean pages. I started from the beginning, when she was 6, when I first picked her up from school after the funeral, when she asked if she could sleep on my couch because her dad was locked in his room. I didn't write it for anyone else. I wrote it because the story had been turned into something I didn't recognize. Not by strangers, but by the people who lived it. I filled 20 pages in 2 days. Dates, memories, moments I remembered down to the details. What shoes she wore on her first day of high school. How her hands shook during her driving test. The way she cried when we found her lost cat behind the garage. I don't know if anyone will ever read it. I'm not sure it matters. But now it's written. The whole thing. Not edited, not softened, just the truth. It started with a cardboard box from the top shelf of my closet. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were the things I hadn't thrown away. Birthday cards, little notes written in crayon, school photos, a glitter-covered Father's Day card from when she was 9. She crossed out Dad and wrote Uncle underneath, but left the heart she drew around it. I laid everything out on the dining table. There was the science fair ribbon from the year we built the volcano together. A hand-drawn picture of us eating ice cream in front of a house with giant sunflowers. Notes she used to leave me on the fridge. Don't forget my lunch, or thanks for fixing my bike. I decided to put it all together, not to send a message or demand anything, just to give her something real, something that couldn't be twisted by memory. I bought a black leather binder, the kind used for wedding albums. I added clear sleeves for each item, organized by year. I printed captions and small font dates, where we were, what happened that day. I slid each letter I had written over the years into its own sleeve. I didn't change the wording or fix the handwriting. I left everything as it was. At the very back, I included the voicemail transcript from her father, the one where he thanked me for stepping up while he figured himself out. I printed it out and placed it in a sealed envelope, marked only with the date it was left. I tucked it behind everything else. Then I sealed the binder in a padded envelope, typed out her address, her current one, which I quietly confirmed through a friend of the family, and mailed it. No return address, no name, just the binder with no explanation. 2 weeks passed. Nothing. I didn't expect a thank you. I didn't expect anything at all. But I knew she had it now. That was enough. About a week later, I was picking up a prescription when someone tapped me on the shoulder. It was Lily's middle school English teacher. I hadn't seen her in nearly a decade, but she recognized me instantly. She smiled and told me I hadn't changed much. Then she said, "She used to talk about you every day." Before I could react, she told me about an essay Lily once wrote in 7th grade called My Real Dad. The teacher said she remembered it because she cried reading it. She told me how Lily wrote about being scared all the time, but how things felt safe when I was around. I paid for my prescription and walked out without saying much else. The parking lot felt 10 degrees warmer than it was. That evening, a friend of mine stopped by for dinner. She's a licensed therapist and has known me for years. I told her everything. The call from Thomas, the binder, the silence. She listened carefully, then said something that stuck with me. Sometimes people rewrite the story to protect themselves, especially when they're afraid they caused the loss. I didn't respond. Lily's 23rd birthday was coming up. I thought about writing again. Just a card, but I stopped myself. The binder was already in her hands. Whether she opened it or not, that was hers to decide. A few days before her birthday, my mother called. She'd heard through a cousin that Lily had moved out of her father's house. There had been a fight, but nobody knew the details. She left abruptly and didn't say where she was going. Thomas hadn't told anyone anything except that she needed space. I didn't ask for more. I didn't try to follow up. Still, I couldn't stop wondering. Did she open the binder? Did she read the transcript at the back? Did she ask him about it? Did he lie again? I didn't have answers, but I didn't need them right away. That night, while clearing out a drawer I'd ignored for years, I found one last envelope. It was addressed to me in Lily's tiny block letters. She must have been around 10 when she wrote it. Inside was a folded piece of notebook paper with a short note in purple ink. "If anything bad ever happens, promise you won't leave me." There was a sticker of a dolphin next to her name. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at that note until the streetlights came on outside. I didn't cry. I didn't write anything back. I just said the words out loud to no one. I never did. I folded it carefully and placed it in the binder's original box. Then I put the box back where it had been all along. Top shelf, far left, behind the winter coats. Not because I was hiding it, just because it didn't need to be opened anymore. It was 9:37 p.m. on a Wednesday when someone knocked on my front door. The knock wasn't loud, but it was steady. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door and she was standing there. Lily. She didn't say anything at first, just stood on the porch, arms crossed, her eyes fixed on mine like she was trying to decide if I was real. The porch light flickered a little. She didn't look angry. She didn't look nervous. She looked like someone who had just stepped into a room she wasn't sure she was supposed to be in. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "Did you mean it?" I asked what she was talking about. She didn't answer with words at first. She lifted the binder. She was holding it tightly, like it might fall apart if she let go. Her thumb was tucked between 2 pages, like she'd been flipping through it just before showing up. Then she asked again, more clearly this time. "All of this? Was this really how it happened?" I stepped aside and told her she could come in. She shook her head. "I can't stay," she said. "I just needed to know if it was real." So we sat on the porch. She sat cross-legged near the railing. I stayed on the steps. It felt like a conversation from a different life, half-whispered, full of pauses, words escaping too fast and too slow all at once. She told me she had believed her father, that when she was 17 and everything felt heavy and confusing, he had said I walked away, that I was tired of pretending and didn't want to play dad anymore, that I'd said she was becoming too much and needed space. That night, she said she cried alone in her room, thinking I had finally seen her as a burden after all those years. She said she didn't question it because it lined up with everything he'd been saying during her therapy sessions. He told her that healthy relationships had distance and that I was confusing care with control and that I'd eventually prove him right by disappearing. Then, she found the binder. She said she opened it out of curiosity, not hope. She didn't expect much. But once she started reading the letters, the notes, the photos, she couldn't stop. She stayed up until morning with it spread out on her bed. That was when the cracks formed in what she'd believed all these years. She asked about the voicemail transcript. I told her it was real. I offered to play the original if she ever wanted to hear it. She nodded but didn't ask for it then. She apologized without using the word. She said she had spent years angry at someone who hadn't actually done what she believed he had done, and that every time someone mentioned my name, she pushed it away before the confusion could get too loud. I told her I wasn't angry, just tired. You asked me to step away, I said, so I did. She didn't argue with that. After a while, she stood up. The binder was still in her arms, now held against her chest like a shield. She said she wasn't ready for anything, that she needed to sort things out, that she had no idea what she believed anymore. Then she turned and walked back to her car. I didn't ask her to stay. The next 7 days passed without a single word from her. I didn't text. I didn't call. I didn't even check to see if she was online. I just replayed the porch conversation in my head over and over, every night before falling asleep. Then one afternoon I got a voicemail. It was her father. I had never blocked Thomas's number, just stopped responding after all those years. I guess part of me kept the line open, even if I never used it. His voice was loud, frantic. He accused me of manipulating her, of twisting everything, of turning her against him. He said I should have stayed out of it, that I had no right. I deleted the voicemail before it finished. Then I blocked the number permanently. That conversation, whatever it could have been, was over. He had more than enough chances to tell the truth. Instead, he lied over and over, to her, to everyone. That was the last time I heard from him. No one else in the family brought it up. My mother didn't mention Lily's visit. If she knew, she didn't show it. Life stayed quiet. Days passed like they always had. Coffee, work, groceries, long drives with the radio low. The porch stayed empty, but the air felt a little less heavy now. I didn't know if she'd come back, but for the first time in years, I knew she knew the truth. A week after she showed up at my door the first time, Lily came back. It was a Saturday morning just after 10 o'clock. The weather was clear, not too warm. I had been trimming the hedge out front when I saw her car pull up and park across the street. She got out slowly, holding something tight to her side. A small spiral notebook, the kind she used to scribble in when she was younger. She crossed the road without looking at her phone once. When she reached the steps, she didn't ask if it was a bad time. She just looked at me and said, "Can we sit down and talk properly?" We went inside. I put on the kettle more out of habit than anything else. She sat at the kitchen table where she used to do her homework, the same chair even. She placed the notebook in front of her and slid it across the table. Inside were letters, handwritten, dated, folded carefully. Some had little doodles in the corners, tiny flowers, a half-drawn sun, a crooked heart. She said she started writing them after our fallout, usually around the holidays or whenever something big happened. She never mailed them. She never thought I'd read them. She said she didn't even know if she meant all of it at the time, but she kept writing anyway. She flipped to one marked College Move-In Day. That was the first time she admitted it. She had missed me. Her father didn't come. She had stood alone outside the dorm building, 2 suitcases on the curb, watching other families carry boxes and hang string lights. She remembered holding her phone, thinking about calling me, and then putting it back in her pocket. She said she really believed I had walked away, that I chose to stop being part of her life. Her father told her during one of their worst arguments that I had been tired of pretending to be her dad and had finally admitted it was too much. She was 17 when she heard that. She said it hit her harder than anything else he'd ever said. When she started seeing the therapist her father picked, that story was never questioned. The sessions, she said, were all about healthy detachment, boundaries, and cutting emotional entanglement. It felt like confirmation. She said she went along with it, thinking it was what healing looked like. She said she realized later, much later, that context had been twisted, that her father had told only part of the story and let the rest fill in with silence. And because I didn't fight back or push, it became easier to believe. The turning point, she said, wasn't when she moved out. It was the binder. She found it on her porch after a long shift at work. She didn't recognize the envelope. When she opened it, she said she sat on her bed for hours, going through every page. That was the first time in years she cried without being able to stop. She didn't call me right away because she was ashamed. She thought too much time had passed. She didn't know if I'd even open the door. She kept thinking I'd be angry or cold or worse, indifferent. I didn't try to comfort her with words. I just told her the truth. You didn't lose me. You just didn't look back long enough to see I never left. She didn't respond right away, but she nodded and blinked quickly, like she was trying to keep everything together. She asked if I still had the letters I wrote. I got up and brought out the one I had written for her 18th birthday. It was short, a little awkward, but it was the one I kept in a separate drawer. I handed it to her. She opened it carefully, reading in silence. Halfway through, her hand started to shake. She didn't finish out loud. She just looked up and said, "I wish I had read this 5 years ago." When she stood to leave, she placed her notebook back on the table and slid it toward me. "I want you to keep it," she said. I didn't know who else would understand any of it. I walked her to the door. She paused on the porch, turned to say something, then stopped herself. She walked to her car without looking back, but the door didn't close like it used to. It didn't slam. It didn't creak. It closed softly, like something that might open again. 3 weeks passed before anything arrived. A small envelope in my mailbox. No return address, but the handwriting was hers. Inside was a single line on plain white paper. "I understand now. Thank you for staying even when I pushed you away." There was no date, no name, no explanation. But there didn't need to be. Later that evening, my phone rang. It was her. She asked if we could talk properly on the phone this time, not in passing, not on a doorstep. I said yes. We spoke for nearly an hour. There were no rehearsed lines or heavy questions. She talked about work. I told her about the neighbor's dog that had somehow figured out how to open my gate. She laughed at that. It wasn't emotional or tense. It just felt like talking to someone you used to know, and maybe still did. She said she wasn't sure how to fix everything. I told her there was no pressure, no timeline. We don't go back. We just start from where we are. The next weekend, she came by in the afternoon. She asked if I still had the memory box, the original one, the plastic tub with her drawings and notes from when she was little. I brought it down from the top of the closet. We sat on the living room floor with it between us. I opened the lid, and we started pulling things out. She smiled when she saw the superhero drawing, 2 stick figures with capes flying above a house labeled ours. She had drawn it when she was 8. I had kept it in a plastic sleeve so the crayon wouldn't smudge. She laughed for the first time in years. Loud, clear, sudden. The sound filled the whole room. At the bottom of the box were her old birthday cards, her school field trip name tags, even a flattened penny from a zoo we visited once. After a while, she reached into her bag and pulled out a printed photo. It was a picture of us on the porch from the second time she visited, taken by a neighbor's kid who happened to walk by and offered to snap one. She folded it gently and slid it into the box. She didn't say anything about it. She didn't need to. That night over tea, she told me what happened with her father. After finding the binder and reading the transcript, she confronted him. She didn't yell. She just laid it out. Everything she had seen, read, remembered. He deflected, accused her of rewriting the past, said she was choosing fantasy over facts. But this time, she said, she saw it clearly. The gaslighting, the redirection, the fear in his voice that she wasn't following the script anymore. She stood up, looked him in the eye, and told him he had lied to her, not once but repeatedly. Then she walked out. No shouting, no final dramatic speech, just the truth. She blocked his number the next morning. She told me it was the first time she truly cut him off, not out of anger but out of clarity. She didn't want another version of the story. She was done collecting those. I didn't comment on her decision. I never wanted her to lose him. I only ever wanted her to know the truth. But I respected her choice. This time it was hers alone. We didn't plan anything formal after that, but every week she started dropping by for coffee. Always the same cafe, a small corner table by the window. She'd bring her notebook. I'd bring one of the old letters I wrote her over the years. She'd ask questions, not all serious. Some were small. Did we really have a tree house with a trapdoor? Or did I really cry that hard when we lost the hamster? She remembered more than she thought. Last week she brought her own letter. It was sealed in a blue envelope. She handed it to me without looking up and said, "Only one thing this time. I want you to keep it." I opened it when I got home. Inside, she had written, "You were the only person who never asked me to be anything other than myself. I just wasn't ready to believe that kind of love existed. I do now." I placed the letter in the memory box, right next to the one from when she was 10, where she asked me to promise I wouldn't leave if anything bad ever happened. And I hadn't. I never abandoned her. But loving her meant letting her believe I had. Because sometimes when someone asks you to step away, the kindest thing you can do is go and stay gone until they're ready to return. Not to prove anything, just to show them they were never alone.